Okay, can you imagine you pay a coach, a mentor, a consultant, whoever, $6,500 for them to give you feedback on your business, and their response is,
Looks good.
another day, another scam story. Let's go ahead and jump into this story of an individual that spent $6,500 on a business coach who told them to take a cold shower, put on some red lipstick, and go find those clients. If you have a scam story you want me to read out here on the channel, the form where you can submit it is linked down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I am an online content creator with a popular YouTube channel in the French-speaking world. Although I've been active for 6 years and earn a decent income, my financial situation has been very unstable. I've struggled with paying rent and other basic expenses. Before this, I was even a university professor. Despite my intelligence and qualifications, I found myself in a tough spot at the end of 2023 and into 2024, dealing with significant debt, including obligations to the French government, which is why I moved abroad in 2023 to try and ease my financial burden. In the midst of a particularly tumultuous period, which included dealing with relentless harassment from a stalker issuing threats and navigating complex legal battles, I found myself completely unsupported, no partner, no family, just me against the world. This backdrop of personal challenges made the stability of my professional life even more crucial. Okay, so it sounds to me as though we are already painting the picture for perhaps why this person ended up in this situation. I mean, we haven't gotten into the story yet, but I'm assuming if they submitted to the scam story, they weren't in the best of situations, or didn't eventually find themselves in the best of situations. And I will say that I do admire this individual for mentioning the fact, I'm intelligent and I have qualifications and I used to be a university professor, because I think a lot of the times people who aren't really involved in the coaching industry at all, or maybe haven't had any kind of experience directly in coaching, tend to have this attitude of, well,
People that fall for coaching scams are just idiots.
and that's really not the case, as we've heard from so many of the stories here on the channel. I'll link the playlist here. And obviously, those of you that have watched a lot of my content know that I don't believe that that's true. I think more often than not, the reason why a lot of people end up in unfortunate situations, particularly in coaching, is because they find themselves in vulnerable positions, much like the picture that this person is painting, and they just want reprieve from that situation. I did a video actually about 2 years ago now, where I discuss in detail the psychology behind why people get scammed. So I'll make sure to link that video as well, because I think there is a really important conversation to be had about how it's not related to how smart you are when it comes to getting scammed. It's really more about being vulnerable, wanting a solution for whatever problem you're facing, and then having this person with a seemingly picture perfect life come along and say,
Oh, I have the perfect solution for you. You just have to pay me lots of money to get it.
and so I really appreciate the level of detail that this person is going into. Like, this is a very long story, as I'm sure you can tell by the length of this video, and I'm really interested to see where it goes from here. Amidst this chaos, I decided to seek out a business coach to help stabilize my online content creation and paid services. My past experiences with business online courses had been unsatisfactory. Their aggressive, overly masculine approaches had always felt off-putting. Then I came across Coach F. Her style was different, gentle and reassuring. She spoke of ethics, morals, integrity, and alignment, using a soft, persuasive voice that resonated with me on a deeper level. I was drawn in by her promise of selling ethical and honest pricing that truly reflected the value of my services. Her coaching package offered 3 months of personalized guidance, including 12 Zoom sessions, and the appealing prospect of unlimited daily contact via WhatsApp. It seemed like the perfect fit for someone like me who is navigating such a precarious financial and personal situation. The coaching package offered by Coach F was steeply priced at 4,200 euros, which is about 6,500 Canadian dollars, a sum that initially seemed out of my reach. Despite expressing my financial constraints, Coach F didn't miss a beat. She pressed on, asking how I could possibly gather the funds. Unfamiliar with the aggressive tactics of closing calls, I felt pressured and trapped into making a decision without the luxury of time to think it over. Of course, she only had 1 spot left and 5 people waiting in line. I hate to see this. Classic scarcity sales tactic. Kind of ironic coming from someone who allegedly claimed to be an ethical coach. This person sharing the story is expressing to the coach that they're financially strapped, they're in a not great financial position, and rather than the coach maybe empathizing with their situation or recognizing that perhaps this isn't the right place, right time to try and sell this person, instead opts to ask them,
Well, what creative ways could you find the funding?
like, let's be serious for a second. You're asking someone who is already expressing that not only are they in debt, but they don't have access to any additional money. And you're trying to get them to come up with 4,200 euros on the spot? Like, be so for real. And the client here, the person telling this story, is right. That's not coaching. That is a closing call. It is a high pressure sales tactic to get you to feel uncomfortable, maybe feel a little bit guilty, and try to think creatively about how you're going to access this life-changing opportunity by figuring out a way to pay for it. It sounds so much like the interview that I did a couple weeks ago where this woman was told to sell her car in order to pay for her coaching program. And let me guess, if you say no, this coach is going to tell you,
Oh, well, you must just not be that serious about wanting to be successful.
I'm so freaking sick of it. To demonstrate my commitment and respect for her time, I not only paid the initial 1,000 euro deposit, but also scrambled to gather the full amount shortly after. From the outset, the signs were all there. Glaring red flags flapping wildly. There was an alarming informality to the entire agreement. No contracts inked, no confirmation emails exchanged, nothing to lend tangible form to the agreement. Bewildered and seeking some semblance of security, I emailed Coach F, eager to nail down the specifics. I detailed my ambitions in the email, stabilizing my income, escaping the relentless cycle of product launches, and establishing a more sustainable financial flow. I poured out my concerns about deep-rooted financial beliefs, legacies of my childhood marred by financial instability, that I feared were sabotaging my business success. This outreach was more than just administrative. It was a bid to safeguard my significant financial outlay. Our coaching officially kicked off at the end of May 2024. In our very first session, Coach F dropped a bombshell. Apparently, the key to unlocking my financial potential was taking daily cold showers. Yes, you read that right. According to her, my nervous system was snugly ensconced at a certain financial ceiling and utterly resistant to climbing any higher. To overcome this, she advised that I not only brace myself for chilly dawns, but also engage in a ritual of ancestral forgiveness, ostensibly to open myself up to the universe's bounty. What is happening? Oh God, I can already predict where this is gonna go. She prescribed a regimen that included daily cold showers and listening to mantras dedicated to the god Ganesh on YouTube, promising that this blend of physical shock and spiritual invocation would break through my financial barriers. Despite my reservations, I wondered if perhaps there was merit to her mystical approach that my rational mind was dismissing. During that same session, Coach F introduced another task. A walking gratitude exercise where I was to list for each letter of the alphabet something I was grateful for. I stalled at A for amour, love in English, a concept that painfully reminded me of my unloved upbringing and luckless romantic endeavors. The exercise meant to foster positivity, instead heightened my stress, forcing me to confront a void where love should have been. Okay, I feel like here we're kind of sliding into the blurry boundaries of coaching versus therapy, and I would be curious to know whether or not they are capable of dealing with the repercussions of opening people's childhood wounds. My guess is no, but let's see. Finding the exercise overwhelming was not particularly beneficial. I decided to pause our weekly meetings. I needed space to manage other pressing issues and felt these sessions weren't yielding the tangible outcomes I sought. Despite this, Coach F pushed for an acceleration of our sessions, heightening the pressure. My interactions with her on WhatsApp were sparse, reflecting my growing disillusionment with the coaching process. Okay, this is super interesting to me because the client is saying they want to pause their weekly sessions, and the client is the one paying for the service, so presumably they should have a right to kind of dictate how they want to receive that service, right? You know, they're feeling overwhelmed, they want time to kind of process these issues that are coming up for them. Perfectly fine. But how does the coach respond? Interesting, because she's doing the exact opposite. She's pushing for more sessions, more contact, more, which to me seems completely counterintuitive to respecting someone's boundaries. If someone is verbalizing to you, I need some time, I need some space, maybe we can take things slower, and your response is to do the exact opposite, that's not really coaching. That feels like coercion almost, of like,
I'm gonna force you into this scenario whether you like it or not.
like what? Horrific. As our sessions progressed, Coach F increasingly incorporated elements that made me uncomfortable. such as hypnosis, despite my clear communication that it induced severe anxiety for me. Her conversations often veered into the territory of manifestation and expansion. One unsettling revelation was her claim that she had manifested me as a client, a red flag that I only recognized in hindsight. The dynamics between us began to shift subtly yet significantly. She started using endearments like darling and my love and would send messages saying, I love you. Her flattery grew as she often told me I was her favorite client, a brilliant person, and her champion. She also said that she was learning and progressing thanks to our interactions. Okay, again, another clear indication that this coach does not respect this individual's boundaries. The client is clearly saying, hypnosis causes me anxiety, and the coach's response is to just keep doing it anyway? I'm sorry, what? Further to this whole situation here of like how the coach is talking to the client feels incredibly uncomfortable to me as the person reading this story. I cannot imagine experiencing it firsthand. And I'd be curious to know, obviously we're never going to know, whether or not this approach was intentional, as in like something that she does with all of her clients to try and create that sense of like emotional enmeshment where it makes it really hard to get out, or if the coach genuinely just really liked this client and rather than respect like professional coaching and client boundaries, they decided to say screw it and just treat them like they were their best friend. Either way, incredibly wrong in my opinion from a professional perspective, but overall just feels really, really manipulative. And I say that because although on the surface it might sound, you know, light and airy, like, oh, it's so nice that I'm her favorite client and that she says she loves me and she cares about me and blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, as a person in power, using this type of language can be a way in which these coaches sort of control the actions of their clients. So really, really curious to see where this goes because I absolutely do not like this. I found myself increasingly viewing her as a mother figure, a bond I yearned for due to the lack of material affection in my own traumatic childhood. Her gentle demeanor and affectionate words filled a void in my life, and her smile brought me a sense of happiness that was deeply intoxicating yet painfully costly. The emotional investment equated to 2 months' worth of my salary. She frequently shared her own stories of childhood trauma and abuse at the hands of her father, presenting herself as a survivor who had transcended her past. She suggested that I was like her younger self, drawing parallels that felt both deeply personal and manipulatively flattering. This narrative made me extremely uncomfortable and felt more like a calculated effort to forge a bond based on a shared pain rather than genuine business coaching progress. Super interesting. It sounds as though as you were living this experience, you were kind of aware of what was going on, which I think is something we don't see a lot in a lot of the stories that we hear on the channel. And I know like that wasn't my experience either. I didn't really realize what was happening until I was very far detached from that scenario and a lot of time had passed. So it's super interesting to me the level of self-awareness that this person appears to have and to be able to recognize these red flags as they're popping up. In June, Coach F dropped a bombshell. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer. What she conveniently omitted was that she had known since March 2024, long before we formalized our coaching agreement. I only discovered this later, adding a layer of betrayal to my already complex feelings. The news hit me hard. It unearthed old traumas. At 7 years old, I had almost lost my mother to illness, and the fear of loss overwhelmed me once again. Additionally, the financial investment I had made in this coaching loomed large in my mind, intertwining my fears with financial anxieties. When I tentatively suggested we might pause our sessions, she burst into tears. She expressed feeling rejected and insisted on continuing the coaching to maintain her energy to battle her illness. Consequently, she became largely unreachable during conventional work hours, opting to only work in the afternoons. Her response to my inquiries, always delayed until midnight, were often incorrect due to her fatigue from treatment. Despite this, I feel a deep-seated embarrassment over my growing frustrations. I hadn't yet recognized the invisible loyalty, a trauma bond that had formed between us. Okay, I have a few complicated thoughts about this because obviously I have a lot of empathy for someone who is diagnosed with cancer, going through treatment, and I can only imagine how stressful that would be, especially as a business owner. Presumably, one of the reasons you want to keep working is because you want to, have money still coming in even though you're sick. Because if you have to take time off, then maybe you don't have other sources of income, maybe you don't have a partner to help you, pay the bills while you're going through treatment, that sort of thing. And so I can only imagine how stressful that would be. But similarly, I still find it kind of manipulative that you're then sort of passing that obligation off onto your clients. And so now this client is bearing the burden of feeling, as she said, deep-seated embarrassment over my growing frustrations. She's frustrated. She's not really getting the service that she paid for, but she also doesn't want to say anything because she knows that the coach is sick. Like, it just puts the client in a really unfortunate position where I would assume the guilt of knowing that you, the coach, are sick now has them unable to adequately express their concerns, because then it seems like they're not being sympathetic and that they don't really care about your well-being, which I'm certain is not the case, but it's super, super complicated. My empathy and compassion were at all-time highs, and I felt unable to demand better service or accountability. Okay, that's exactly what I thought. The idea of reprimanding her seemed impossible. I was tied to this notion that I couldn't challenge someone who had shown me immense kindness and was potentially facing mortality. Confusion reigned my mind. A part of me sensed that something was amiss, but I dismissed these thoughts as unhealthy skepticism. I rationalized her minimal effort as her best under the circumstances, chastising myself for being too demanding, given her health issues. Over the extended 4 months of our engagement, the tangible outcomes were meager. I received nothing but sweet nothings and ineffective sales techniques seeped in seduction and manipulation. Tactics like unhealthy persuasion, NLP, and hypnosis. She even suggested that I adopt a more alluring persona in my videos by wearing dark red lipstick, plunging necklines, and large rings, and applying makeup on camera to hypnotize my audience. She shared her own sales scripts, which she employed in her closings, further blurring the lines between genuine coaching and manipulative salesmanship. In a somewhat desperate attempt to placate me, Coach F granted me access to her online course designed to teach the basics of selling. However, this was a beginner-level course, a far cry from what I needed. It seemed to be a mishmash of Alex Hormozy's books, generic ChatGPT prompts, and an assortment of spiritual beliefs about manifestation and money attraction. Nothing about it was new or groundbreaking, yet she charged a hefty €2,900, around $4,500 Canadian, for this recycled content. She offered it to me as if to silence any complaints, perhaps to ease her own creeping guilt. But a basic online course was not what I was after. From the outset, I had been clear. I wanted a comprehensive audit of my business, a detailed report, and a hands-on approach to enhancing my operations. None of that happened. Despite sharing numerous documents with her, sales pages, email sequences, and more, she barely glanced at them. Her feedback was superficial at best, always assuring me that everything was good without delving deeper. Okay, can you imagine you pay a coach, a mentor, a consultant, whoever, $6,500 for them to give you feedback on your business, and their response is,
Looks good.
no, absolutely not. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me how to fix it. Why am I paying you in the first place if you're just gonna say,
Everything's fine. You're doing great, sweetie.
no? During the Olympic Games in France last summer, she referred to me as her champion and herself as the coach of champions. This flattery did stroke my ego, making me feel seen, appreciated, and valued. I basked in the glow of her praise, oblivious at the time to the superficiality of her compliments. I was caught up in the moment, unaware of how little substance lay beneath her encouraging words. Again, I think that this is a similar experience to many people who have been burned by the coaching industry. Please let me know in the comments. But I know for me, especially with my first coach, she was really big on positively affirming me, telling me how much she loved what I was up to, etc. And it makes it really hard, I think, to see the fact that oh, there isn't really any substance here and I'm not really getting anything for the money that I paid other than just paying this very expensive cheerleader to tell me that everything's good and that I'm doing great. So you're definitely not alone in that feeling and that experience. And again, if you're watching this and you had a similar experience, please share it in the comments. Because I think that's why people get so caught up and so stuck in the industry, is because it feels good to have people tell you that you're doing good and that your business is amazing and that everything is so sunshine and rainbows. Even when it's not, we want to hear that so that we can feel those fuzzy, warm feelings, right? Like, this is why this industry continues to persist. The coaching saga wrapped up at the end of September 2024. By October, Coach F reached out seeking my honest feedback on our sessions. Internally, I was wrestling with doubts. I hadn't received much in the way of genuine feedback from her throughout our time together, and yet, amidst my cognitive dissonance, I found myself holding back. Instead of voicing my concerns, I offered her thanks, while gently expressing a wish that she had delved deeper into the materials I'd provided. Her response? But your work is already perfect. That left me blinking in disbelief. Perfect? Really? Hold on, it gets better. In September 2024, she launched a 5-day free challenge as part of her course promotion. For reasons beyond my comprehension at the time, I offered to share my testimony during a Zoom call. What was I thinking? Looking back, I suspect I was grappling with lingering attachment. During our coaching, she had somewhat become a mother figure for me, one who had smothered me with affection and love, only to abruptly withdraw once I was no longer a paying client. I would also be curious to know if the person who submitted this story struggles with people-pleasing at all. I know for me, in my experience, if you watch the video where I explain my whole coaching story of how I spent over $5,000 on various coaches, in that video, I believe I share a screenshot of an email that I sent to my coach after the coaching had ended. Even when I was unsatisfied with the service that I received, I was still so afraid of like having someone be upset with me or having her think that like I was a mean person or something, that my response to her email was like, oh my God, yeah, everything's fine. When really it's not fine, but I was such a big people pleaser back then. And like, obviously, I don't know the person that submitted it. They submitted it anonymously, but I would just be curious to know if that's something that they struggle with as well, because I think that those two things are often tied together. And then just as a little bit of an addition, the last sentence where it talks about, you know, the love being abruptly withdrawn once you stop being a paying client. I think that's something we see in coaching. People experience it in MLMs, any kind of transactional relationship. Once the other person is no longer benefiting, particularly financially, from you anymore, it's like the friendship never existed, the relationship never existed, etc. All they really cared about was getting your money. And even though at the time it seemed like they care about you as the person, the reality speaks a different story once all is said and done and you're no longer making payments. I think that's probably a story that a lot of people who watch this channel, again, myself included, can definitely relate to. Subconsciously, I must have been desperate to remain in her orbit, to continue receiving the my darling and my love that had briefly filled a void in my life. It was a hunger, a thirst for the affection she had freely given and then just as quickly taken away. I wasn't guilty for being human, for feeling vulnerable, or for forming an attachment to what seemed like a nurturing presence. I was merely guilty of trying to hold on to a little warmth in a world that had suddenly grown cold. In the early months of 2025, I decided it was time to hit pause on all the bustle and truly assess my business and strategy. This period of reflection led me to a sobering realization. I had been scammed. There was months post-coaching, wrestling with the very same issues I'd hoped to conquer. What exactly had she resolved other than puffing up my ego? Absolutely nothing. Initially, I thought I'd keep my disillusionment to myself. But as the days passed, my disappointment fermented into a potent brew of rage, resentment, and betrayal. I couldn't keep silent anymore. I had to speak up, though part of me still harbored a faint hope that she might understand and acknowledge her shortcomings. Our confrontation came on a Zoom call on March 8th. Where she spent most of the hour just nodding along as I laid out the facts calmly and rationally. She seemed taken aback, suggesting we take some time to reflect and reconvene on March 24th. When I did, I met a completely different person. Armored with a well-rehearsed script, she twisted my words, painted reality in bizarre hues, and labeled me as rigid, uncoachable, blaming me for not embracing her revolutionary ideas like dressing in seductive outfits to enchant my audience. Of course, it was not her fault. I was the guilty one. Despite her criticism, she offered to continue coaching me for free until I achieved my goals. But by then, I had seen enough. I declined and requested a partial refund. Her reaction was dramatic. She recoiled, hands to chest, as if warding off an attack, and accused me of abusing her time and energy. "I was there for you," she exclaimed. "I cheered you on, and this is how you repay me?" She couldn't fathom that I had the clarity to challenge her, suggesting that some recent traumas must have skewed my judgment. Even the testimony I had naively offered during her course was thrown back into my face as if my change of heart was a betrayal rather than a return to sense. Refusing to absorb the blame hurled at me, I resolved to tackle the gaslighting and manipulation head on the very next day. She had skillfully dodged all accountability, turning the tables to paint me as the aggressor. Insane, obsessive, and shockingly, a racketeer. Yes, the very person who had siphoned off my funds now branded me a thief. Throughout the ordeal, I had clung to facts, maintaining a respectful and objective tone, unlike her. But as those tangled in gaslighting know all too well, facts are merely obstacles in their twisted narratives. Okay, you know what really stands out to me here about this story? As I'm reading it, I'm kind of nodding along because I can definitely relate to this experience. As a creator that often, calls out problematic behavior in the industry, a lot of the time, the response I receive, rather than, these people listening to the arguments being presented, they immediately move to deflection. And so the moment that this client challenged the coach calmly and clearly, the reaction isn't, oh, okay, let me understand where maybe the miscommunication was. Let me try and see where I went wrong as the service provider. Instead, in my opinion, it becomes a complete identity collapse. And suddenly the coach is now the victim in the whole scenario. I mean, every single time I post a video, including receipts, including thoughtful analysis, I'm immediately labeled as hateful, jealous, bitter, etc. You guys have all seen it in my comment section, I'm sure. And obviously, I don't think it's because what I'm saying is wrong or incorrect, but it's because to them and their identity, which is so tied up in the coaching that they offer and the services that they provide, they feel like it's a personal attack on them as individuals. And so any critique of the methods that they use, the way that they conduct their coaching, the problematic behavior and rhetoric that they spew feels like a personal attack. And I think this speaks to a greater issue with the industry as a whole and really just society in terms of like any job that you have, where we as individuals have a really hard time separating ourselves from who we are and what we do. Like, yes, I'm Danielle Ryan, I'm a content creator, but that's not really who I am as a person. That's just a thing that I do. Does that make sense? And so this whole story is super interesting to me because rather than the coach hearing something like, hey, I didn't actually get what I paid for, they're hearing betrayal, which is why I think this coach in particular reacted with such like over the top theatrics, because having to acknowledge the fact that like, hey, maybe I didn't actually do my job would also partially be admitting that like, maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. But of course, that's all just alleged in my opinion. Then adding insult to injury, after blocking me on Instagram and hurling insults, she reached out with a voice message dripping with her typical saccharine tone. She feigned confusion over the conflict, portraying her undying affection and concern for my mental and financial well-being. Her grand solution? Offering me free hypnotherapy sessions to connect me with my client's heart. I remained silent, not dignifying her offer with a response. Oh my God, this is actually crazy to me. I'm thinking, okay, I'm the client, I have this coach, we don't end on the best terms because I expressed to her like, hey, I didn't get what I paid for. She then turns the story around, makes me feel like it's my fault I didn't get results and that I'm being, the bully here, and then decides like, hey, let me offer you free coaching. Like, can't you tell that I'm not happy with you? I don't want to continue this relationship. Like, this feels like harassment almost at this point. But again, this coach has already indicated that she doesn't respect boundaries. So I'm not surprised by this, but it still seems so wild to me. I understood her sudden shift in tactics. Fear had gripped her. My threat to expose her and others like her, who peddle dreams and hollow promises on social media, had struck a nerve. I had made it clear. I was ready to shine a light on the shadowy practices of so-called business coaches, ensuring others wouldn't fall into the same traps I had. No threats of defamation, just a promise to speak my truth. She was unnerved. Well aware of my substantial reach with the French-speaking world and my voice on radio channels across France and Belgium, she knew about the quiet power I wielded, a power she had attempted to manipulate for her own ends. But here's the twist in the tale. I had healed. I stood my ground, rejecting her manipulative tactics, refusing to shoulder the blame or let her warp reality. This is merely a snapshot of my journey. Many details were omitted to keep my recounting succinct. However, I want to leave you a message for anyone who feels self-blame or shame after being duped. Cut yourself some slack. It's not your fault for being vulnerable. We are all human, endowed with trust and empathy, and yes, we believe in the goodness of others. And I assure you, many good people still exist. We fell for the scam because we were vulnerable and temporarily handed our power over to someone else. The takeaway? We are stronger and smarter than they count on, which terrifies them when we stop buying into the deceit. Okay, so here's the thing. This particular story isn't just about, one coach, one bad investment, their individual experience. Much to the person who submitted this, their point that they made at the end, I think that this is yet another example of how the greater industry as a whole, or certain subsets, let's say, of the industry, really thrive on emotional manipulation, blurred boundaries, and an inability to take accountability for missteps. And it's really about the people, the victims, often women, who are vulnerable but ambitious and sincere in their intentions, really just seeking the opportunity to make better for themselves, being led astray, taken advantage of, and then made to be the perpetrator if they speak out against it. And that's exactly why I keep making these videos. Thank you so much to the individual who submitted this story. If you are watching this video and you have your own story that you want me to read out here on the channel, the form where you can submit it is linked in the description of every single one of my videos. Let me just end on the note with a reminder that criticism isn't hate. Asking questions doesn't mean you're being negative, and it's okay to speak your truth if you don't get what you paid for. Thank you so much for being here. I want to give a big shout out to our channel Millionaire Mastermind VIPs, as well as my rich, rich friends in the billionaire tier. I will leave you on screen here with another scam story in case you missed it. Take care, comb your hair, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye!